I'm Peter Kirn. I'm running a website called Create Digital Music, CDM, and we're sort of a platform for learning about new music technology and building new stuff. And I think that these guys probably, I'm going to see how much introduction they need. How many of you guys are not using Sound? This is Berlin, so how many of you are not using SoundCloud? And
you better start using it. I saw there were two of you over there. Yeah.
How many of you are not DJs? Wow, impressive.
That's not a fair question.
You better start DJing. Yeah.
No, I should rephrase that. Non-DJs. Not how many of you are DJs. How many of you are not DJs? Oh, okay, so this is really a tech conference. The only place in Berlin where that would be the answer. And how many of you are? Well, how many of you are using Native Instruments stuff on your iPhone or on your? Oh, okay. So the kind of the exciting thing about this conversation is we get to have it with a group of people who are engaged with technology maybe more broadly than the folks that I normally talk to, who are mostly musicians and DJs. But I would say that what's exciting to me about both of these two enterprises is that they are well past the sort of startup phase. They've built real businesses and real communities around this culture of making and sharing music. Native Instruments as a maker of, well, you had a terrific description for it yesterday, a maker of tools to, well, how would you describe Native Instruments now?
To be honest, funny enough, even though I'm asked that question, a lot of times I don't have a standard phrase that I pull off. I guess what we are doing is just turning computers into musical instruments and DJ gear, and also provide the hardware components for DJs and music producers. This is basically what Native Instruments does.
Right. Well, I remember, Eric, when I had to go back at some point and look back at the first press materials that I got from SoundCloud to try to remember where that vision was kind of at the beginning. And a lot of what it was describing at the time was just a way to replace what were then FTP servers for labels and artists just sending music around, because at the time that was kind of how a lot of us were doing it. We would say, here's an FTP link. If you have any idea what FTP is, maybe you'll go and download my stuff. So I mean, thinking back to the beginning of SoundCloud, mobile was not really as much part of the picture then at all. This was pre-iPhone, right?
Yeah, I think 1 week after 2 weeks before we came to Berlin to start the company, Steve Jobs actually announced the iPhone. And we realized that, oh, he's onto something. So yeah, no, it became a big part of our story, as it turns out. But yeah, in the beginning, I think, me and Alex, the other co-founder, we were, all over the Native Instrument products. We were using, software to make music. And there really wasn't a place on the web to just, as an artist, just as a creator, be able to share what you do with the world in a kind of straightforward manner, right? So that was kind of the problem we set out to solve, which is very much, scratching our own itch, like something that we needed that wasn't there. And it turns out that more people than us were in need. So.
Well, right. I mean, that's kind of what was exciting about seeing these hands go up. So for those of us making music, and all three of us have at various times been, well, you're not as much making music, but at least
not really.
This half of the room, if we weren't so busy doing the other things we're doing, we like to make music. But as we're producing stuff, we want someone to hear it. And so this is really exciting that a service that's really built for people making music is also a place where people are going to listen to it, right? This is something that, to me, is still different from some of the competitive offerings in the streaming space.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we started sort of naively working just with the creators in mind, and really with ourselves in mind as well, trying to solve the problems that we saw that we had, and then we realized that a broader community had those problems. So what ended up happening was this sort of vibrant community sort of sprung to life. And then we realized that, a few years in, that one of the key needs of this community is just to reach more listeners, reach more, fans and potential fans. And so we realized that we need to bring in the listeners, sort of like another constituent, someone else to build for on the platform, right? So we really started designing, with the listener in mind, in particular on mobile, a few years in. And then, sort of from there, we realized that as soon as as soon as an artist has a lot of followers, they also are interested in making money, basically making a living with what they do on the platform. So again, a few years after that, we sort of started to solve that problem. So now, and that's kind of where we've landed today.
Would you say that these problems kind of not stack up, but that you begin with kind of how to get to listeners and then sort of get to, are you still trying to solve some of the problems you were originally trying to solve in terms of, are there new ways of thinking about how people are actually going to get to that music?
I mean, in the meantime, we've, because of the whole sort of, challenge around monetization and letting creators ultimately kind of earn a living with the service, we had to introduce, advertiser onto the platform. We had to introduce rights holders onto the platform, so labels and so on. So we actually now have multiple sort of constituents that we're designing for. And creators is really at the core of what we do. We have a group around creators, but we also have a group around listeners. We have a group around advertisers, and around rights holders. So we really have all of these sort of parallel tracks that we're working on. And one of the things that we feel that we need to work on now is also the curators. So sort of the next level of things is really introducing the curator as another constituent onto the platform, so building tools for them as well. So it's all about deepening those experiences and really kind of going deeper over time on each area.
I want to get back to kind of Native Instruments' take on how we might listen to music or how we might look at that. But before I get to that, I have to follow up on this question. We hear a lot from those original constituents of the platform, the people who were kind of there just because they wanted to share their music, and then a lot of them, whether it's licensed or not, want to share DJ mixes and so on. How do you kind of resolve these different constituencies? Because for instance, to me, I've never, as a musician, worried about getting a royalty check from streaming. This is completely uninteresting to me. But then data that I get from who's listening to my music is hugely important. And even if it's one person, if I know that you like my track, this is actually more valuable to me to get your feedback on my music maybe than to get a royalty check. So how are those things, how is the immediate future looking as far as that for SoundCloud?
Well, data is certainly sort of a significant part of the overall equation, right? So, there's a lot of value in, first of all, just getting feedback on what you do and to be able to connect in sort of, on a two-way street with your fans, and fans be able to connect with you, and, you connecting with other artists, etc. So that's a huge part of what we do. And then also kind of the data side. And I think, that's why, even if, not everyone today are yet monetizing on the platform, right? We're trying to create basically this model where any creator in the world could, very easily earn revenue on the platform, but we're sort of just started that about 10 months ago, and so it's still sort of early, and we're still rolling that out. But I think like a lot of people see, great value on the platform just because of the reach, the promotion, the data that they're getting, in addition to revenue. So, there are sort of many different things that people get out of the platform. Do
you think that will kind of shift some of the perception? Because at some point, I think a lot of us are big fans of SoundCloud, the platform. At some point, because of these other requirements, and these are not necessarily requirements SoundCloud has created, but sort of requirements that the industry and labels have created around licensing, then SoundCloud can become kind of the policeman, the people's perception is, okay, my interaction with licensing will be when SoundCloud has sent me a message saying I have to take down a track. Do you think that, are we kind of getting to a point where it may instead be that people say, oh no, okay, SoundCloud is actually going to be sending me some small checks because my content is up there? Could that kind of change some of this perception around that side of things?
It's a long journey, right? Like we started it, multiple years ago now, and we've been working, both on the product side, but also on the kind of deal side, on the commercial side, for a number of years now with rights holders on essentially creating, unique deals that allow for this whole, creative sort of ecosystem to really flourish. And so, remixers, mashups, DJs, all of these different things that are going on SoundCloud, like what we want long term is to enable all of that to happen, and happen like 10x of what it's happening today, right? And we want everyone to be able to earn revenue from that activity, And so we want to embrace that. And the great thing is that, the rights holders in the meantime want to do that too. And that's really been a change over the last few years where, we have a deal now with Warner Music. We have a deal with, the indie consortium of 20,000 labels, Merlin, where, that's literally part of the deal framework. So we're literally just working on getting there. And it's a journey, like it will take a while to actually get there and to roll it out internationally and all of these different things. But like we're well on the way to getting to a place where this is sort of all kind of allowed on a global scale. And that's never been possible before. That's never been done before in history. And so it's a complex, it's a complex project, but it's sort of, we're making very tangible progress on getting there. And so I'm very excited about that. It's personally, it's one of my sort of, favorite things about what we do is we actually allow that to happen.
Well, right, and I guess it's fair to say that you guys are kind of the only player that's trying to do all of those things at once, right? So you go to Apple or Spotify, and they're just trying to get, for the most part, just trying to get rights for music that's already been released. You go to Mixcloud, and Mixcloud is crazy. Mixcloud will tell you you're not allowed to just upload a single track of your music because you can only send the mixes the way that that's set up. So I think it'll be exciting to see how this evolves. So
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay. Yeah. That is a good segue to say that I want to talk a little bit about what Native Instruments does on the production side, but the fact that now Native Instruments for the first time is kind of getting into this question of how music is distributed or what happens after you finish a project with. So I expect this crowd has not heard of stems, so we can surprise them and let them know about what you are doing with stems.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk about it. Even though it's less about distribution, it's just another way of performing and dealing with music itself. Because stems is just a new file format, actually very simple idea. If you're a DJ, and we actually created stems primarily for DJs, or with DJs in mind, what you do when you're a DJ is you use the equalizers and the filters to actually get to certain parts of your track, of your song. You just want the drums or you just want the vocal or whatever, but you cannot really do it. You always only get close. And stems is an idea to break down a track into 4 segments instead of 1. So now you can throw a group that, let's say just vocals on stem 1. Stem 2 is a melody line. Stem 3 is drums, and let's say a bass on stem 4. And what you can now do as a DJ is you can really dive into parts of the music and mess with it in a way that you never could. When you wanted to drop the bass, now you can really just drop the bass and nothing else. And there's nothing that you don't want in the music. You just get the parts that you actually want to. Another very powerful thing that you can do with stems is these days, DJs use a lot of effects when they transition the music, and also when they remix, if you want, a track. But whenever you use an effect, you use it on the whole track. So whatever is going out to the audience is manipulated by that effect. With stems, you can say, okay, wait a second, why not just take the vocal and only mess with the vocal, but the rest of the track is staying exactly the same. So we believe it just gives a lot more creative freedom to the DJ, to the performer. In the end, I think there is also applications that could also on the consumer side benefit from that. But the truth is we have created this primarily with the performer, with the DJ in mind.
Well, and I might disagree with you a little bit that this is maybe distribution was the wrong word, but I suppose what's exciting to me or interesting to me about both of your two companies is that they really have changed for those of us making music how our music is shared in some way. So I mean the ability to kind of finish something and then or have a live performance that you might not otherwise share and immediately have it on SoundCloud and allowing people who weren't in the same room with you when you were playing live, like yourself, to hear what that live performance sounded like is a big change. I think also at least for those of us, especially in dance music production, a lot of our consumers now are DJs, right? That we're making records that aren't necessarily for you to take home and listen to on headphones, but hopefully that people will go out and DJ with them. So it does seem to me that this has a potential to really change how that transaction happens. How do you see your role in this? Because this moves you into a new arena. In order to make this work, So they've basically what these guys have done is they've taken a format that was already there. So I think when we say format, they've not invented a whole bunch of new proprietary stuff. You had the sense
just used the MP4 file format that Apple invented a time ago.
Exactly.
Yes.
So at least there's a standard file format. We don't have to come up with a new file format. The files are very easy to author. And what you get when you get one of these stem files is you get 4 stems. It might be beats and vocals and pads or something in some other part. And then the normal stereo mix, which is a separate file, which is the same thing that you've always heard.
All encapsulated in one file, just so the user doesn't have to deal with that. If you load it into iTunes, you will just hear the stereo track. You load it into Tractor, you can make use of the 4 stems. So it's really compatible with all media players out there.
It does put you in a new role in that, instead of just saying, here's a cool machine to take home and make music with, you do need some involvement from artists, from labels, and maybe eventually from other technology companies. Given that this is something that you sort of led, how do you get those folks on board? And are there some partnerships?
Funny enough, you may know that we've been involved with Beatport many years ago, and just because of our really great connections to labels, to artists on the creative side, Native Instruments is pretty well known and respected in this community, and when Beatport came to life, we talked to them and we actually supported them, invested in Beatport back in the day, and opened doors. So also, the first, if you want, I went already once through that, helping guys to convince labels and artists to actually put their music in digital form on a website for commercial sale. That wasn't standard back then. Obviously there was iTunes already, but wasn't yet the success that we all know it is by now. There were no streaming services. So we went through that process, and because we have all these relationships, we feel, for example, the biggest stores that sell dance music online, Beatport, Juno, TrackSource, they all support us from the beginning. So the availability of stems is late this month, actually. And there are going to be stem tracks available on all these storefronts. Plus, we have already the support of, 60, 80, 60, 70, 80 labels. And on day one, there's going to be 500, 600 tracks available in stem format. And then we have already releases planned for all month by these labels and by these artists. So there is a certain buy-in, even though it's still a small start, but I think it's already quite well received, and we almost only get positive feedback.
Do you think, some of this you can't talk about, but do you think that we will see more technology partners, whether it's kind of bigger players or even things like independent iPhone developers?
Yeah, the truth is I've just been to Japan and talking to Pioneer, which is our biggest competitor in the DJ space. But I think if you really want to do something great, if you want to create a standard, you cannot do that on your own. And as powerful Native Instruments may be to some degree, we need partners for this. And in this case, our competitors become partners. I don't consider Pioneer a competitor in that sense, So I would love for them to jump on the stems file format. It's, again, an open file format available to them. And they are actually very, very interested and look into it as we speak. Let's see what they're going to come back with. They obviously have to do some technical due diligence, how does it work, and competitive due diligence if they feel this is the right move for them to follow the innovators or not.
Can you share their reaction? Was it something they're excited about?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, a very friendly relationship with them. So it's very cool. But the Japanese, they do things in a very formal and, let's say, defined process, and they have to go first through that process, which I think is only fair and makes sense. So I don't know yet what the conclusion is going to be.
Well, this kind of reminds me of some of the stuff that was happening with SoundCloud. I don't think that's sounding like a false segue, but this is truly thinking back to stuff like the SoundCloud API. In terms of, kind of the wonderful thing about music is, in other fields that might be more competitive, the more people use our stuff, the more people they tend to use other stuff with our stuff, and then the more they keep doing. You know, it's this very addictive process of making and sharing music, and kind of the more you do, the more you tend to do it. One of the things that was really interesting to me about SoundCloud kind of early on was all of these API usages and people with mobile apps, and you know, there is a big process for Native Instruments even to add something like export to SoundCloud. Take some work. It's a lot easier sometimes for a single iPhone developer to say, oh, that's cool, and go to a hack day and add it to an app. What kind of role did that have in terms of how people began sharing sharing their stuff to SoundCloud? And is this something that we're likely to see more of?
I think, you know, we are generally extremely excited about music creation and how that's developing. I think, you know, there was kind of an early wave of apps for touch, for multi-touch, a couple of years ago, and we did a bunch of integrations, so we sort of tried a bunch of different things. And I think that now there's sort of like a second wave that's sort of coming as well, and I think you know, you guys are going sort of into that. And I think, you know, generally it's again this sort of order of magnitude sort of difference in terms of the accessibility to, you know, anyone taking out their phone and making music with it. And there is a certain, you know, fluidity to music that wasn't there before. You know, like in the mid-90s, you know, it was all vinyl. It was very much like a strictly kind of underground sort of phenomenon. Whereas now it's like, you know, it's just so much bigger. And I feel personally like, you know, one of the things that I am excited about, and one of the things that I feel that we're very much doing with SoundCloud, is we're sort of like opening the doors to all of this culture that's going on, and we're just making it so much bigger and more sort of, you know, widely distributed in the world, right? So we have 175 million listeners every single month. And that's, you know, a lot of people tuning into music that used to be strictly underground and was very difficult to get access to, you know, in the sort of in the mid-90s. And so the scale of things is just dramatically bigger. And I think like that has all sorts of impact on culture that I don't think we're even beginning to realize, you know, yet. Like it's, you know, it's only when I meet a teenager who I see, you know, has a SoundCloud app on their home screen, and they start talking about how they use it and how much of a social thing it is for them, and so on. Like, that's when I realized that, wow, like the next generation, it is dramatically changing. It's kind of hard, and I'm like 35 now. I feel a bit old now, you know, like with, you know, when I see how teenagers use their phone. But there is definitely a big shift there going on. So I think, you know, yeah, the fluidity is just something that excites me, and I think the stems piece is going exactly to that. It's just that the track itself is literally, you know, it's not defined. It's a fluid sort of thing that, you know, on SoundCloud it gets uploaded in many different permutations, in, you know, many, you know, different contexts, and maybe it's, you know, in a mashup, maybe it's, you know, somewhere else. And all of that needs to live in the world, needs to have a place in the world. And I think the great thing is that sort of like everyone, not only us, like when we started out, we were very excited about that, but now it feels like, you know, the industry is realizing that as well. And so that's, you know, hugely exciting, really. It is a big transformation now when you look at the delta from like 10, 15 years ago to now, huge difference.
Keep talking.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to add to this that I think we're working on the same thing, just on let's say with a different focus. Even though you come from the creator side, there is a lot of listeners, or a lot more listeners than creators on your platform. We are still there primarily for the creators, but we both on the same mission. We try to allow as many people to get access to great music, or to great music tools to create music or to perform music to a much larger scale. And this is exactly what technology can do, and what we both have picked up upon, that we really created tools that are affordable, accessible to so many more, you know, going down to the iPhone, using Tractor DJ or iMachine. There's even more people that can create a little beat while they're on the metro or whatever, you know. I mean, this is all possibilities that widen the spectrum and bring more people into music, into being creative and to interact with music.
In fact, I think you're creating
I have on my phone. Yeah, I have absolutely no idea what this sounds like. Let's see. To turn up the sound, I have iMachine now running on my iPhone, which has a sampling feature. I think it. Whoa! No, hold on. Keep talking. Say something incredible about the...
Incredible about the iMachine. iMachine is, for any musician, incredibly easy to use. For someone that has never done music, it's still pretty complex. So it's not what we could call a consumer app. We would put it in the prosumer domain. So if you get into music making, this is a very simple app. If you, again, have no idea on...
Almost simple enough for me to do.
It's just messing with 16 pads and whatever you record onto them.
For instance, this talk, which we can kind of hear. I don't know if you can actually hear it. Where is the microphone on the speaker on the iPhone? My mic is not very loud, so you can't quite... So we've got some samples from this talk. I can now somehow...
Not sure how exciting that's going to be.
They are super exciting.
Okay.
Let me get a better one. That'll be clearer. Now that it has loop points at the beginning and end, I can actually make that sound a little better. There we go. All right. So I mean, the amazing thing is, Apple is talking a lot about this as a listening device, and you can listen to SoundCloud on it. But kind of something that's happened just in the time that SoundCloud has existed is I can have my studio on here and sort of record samples and make it. Let's see, we'll record. So there's a more ambient piece that I've just created.
Peter, you're really challenging yourself here quite a bit.
But yeah, so I've created some sort of little pattern with this, which is sounding very experimental. My iPhone speaker is too quiet for you to hear, but it sounds amazing, actually, if you could hear it. But, the amazing thing is, I can take it from this device, I can kind of record that and share it to SoundCloud without ever using something other than the thing that fits in my pocket.
True.
So how do we kind of define, you run a company that makes music with computers. You're looking at how we share that music with other people. What do we kind of think the future of what the actual computing device is? Because at the moment it's my telephone, which I wouldn't have imagined 15 years ago. What is the actual computer? What's the actual device that we will be using to create and share? Well, is it going to be this? Is it going to be other things?
I think this is really not so easy to answer. 2 years back, you would say touch device is going to replace every computer over time, but we see that the success of these devices, at least in a larger form, is limited. So I'm not sure where this is going from a technology point of view, and I guess from a native instruments point of view, we even don't try to answer that question. We want to be where others are, where our audience is, our users are, and that means we are supporting touch devices as much as computers. But the truth is, if you want to really create music today in a serious fashion, you still need to bring your laptop or your computer. This is a lot of our users use really iMachine, or Tractor DJ is a little different thing here, I have to say. iMachine is more like sketching out some ideas and then take it to the studio and bring it onto the computer. With Tractor DJ, the boundaries are actually more fluid. There is quite a bit of even very credible DJs. They now take an iPad to the club and perform with that. So yes, there is a change happening, but how fast is it moving into touch or not? We let the market and the users decide and just try to really support all these devices.
I mean, does that change kind of the way, or at least is SoundCloud an arena that sort of allows you to do those things that in terms of you're on the go kind of making things and then sharing them immediately? I mean, for some of us, what makes us comfortable with sharing music is having the time to finish things and kind of sleep on them. What is the role of sort of being able to share stuff right away?
I think, certain creators, and this has been always the case, throughout the times, right? It's just that certain creators, embrace sort of the zeitgeist or, the sort of trends of the time and the technology of the time, and they're able to make the best of it. I think, SoundCloud as a platform, it really supports this sort of like stream of consciousness in some cases, or regular sort of posting cadence of content, which, similar to something like Twitter or Facebook, And not all artists, far from all artists are, sort of adapting to that, let's say. But there are a few artists who do, and they're actually, incredibly successful on the platform. And I think that, increasingly, and we see that, also in our data, right? We see that increasingly that is the case for creators. And, the model of publishing essentially is changing. And so the format that you were talking about before is changing, right? And the old formats are dissolving. It's taking time, but it's sort of like there is a very real transition going on. And so, some artists embrace that and some artists don't, right? But we see that, we see increasingly more of it. And you were talking about devices, like mobile is where it's at, like right now and for the next 10 years, probably 5 to 10 years. We are well over 70% mobile right now globally, and in some territories we're over 90%. 90% in some territories, major territories. So, we are pretty much a mobile product in the meantime, especially on the listener side. And so, yeah, I mean, it's and mobile. I think people are still today. They're sort of underestimating the impact of mobile when you combine like the amount of devices with the amount of engagement, with the amount of input capability, sensors, and all of these different things. The fact that it's a personal device, a social device, all those things. Again, you have this sort of huge difference in engagement and opportunity. And so, yeah, it's massive for us. And I think even though we're doing things around connected devices and cars and all of these different things, mobile is kind of overshadowing all of that. And I think things like the watch and other wearables, it will take some time, I think, before those devices really mature and become sort of the primary mean of listening to music.
Yeah, I like your traditional watch, actually. It looks terrific.
Yeah, it's actually...
And this traditional clock, which is telling me that we are basically out of time, I think. One 60-second question. It's great to have you guys both on the same stage in Berlin, and that but both of your ranges of products are something that I and all my friends live with every week. And also, there's not a week that goes by that I'm not surrounded by people working for both of you. So you're a big part of the community here. Where do you see the immediate future of Berlin in terms of your role in the city? What is this city offering? I mean, we know what it's offered in the past. What is it offering in the next 5 years or so?
I think the city is just maturing, but it's so far kept its character. It's still this very free, liberal place, which is a magnet for creative people. So the truth is, today it's probably more easy to find talent to come to Berlin from the US, from Russia, from wherever, than it used to be 10 years ago, even though it was never very difficult, I have to say. But funny enough, some people think, okay, now there's SoundCloud and you compete with them for talent. The truth is, I think there is more talent willing to come to Berlin than the companies that need it. So I think the talent situation is even better. And as long as we keep the profile of Berlin being this very open, liberal, creative place, I see a bright future to be in this city. Right now, I mean, it's almost too hot. It's like, I mean...
Enough already. Be a little less cool.
Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually for the first time I actually have some real data. I mean, it's still not, huge data set or anything, but we have 80 people in New York, right? So we have a pretty big New York office, and I'm there quite regularly and so on. And people always ask me, yeah, is it harder to attract talent to, Berlin versus SF versus New York? We have an SF office as well with 30 people and so on. So like, now I actually have the data. Since 2 years, we're trying, to attract product people, engineers, and so on in all 3 cities. And I can say that attracting talent to Berlin it's about sort of 5 times easier than to get it, than to hire, let's say, a mobile engineer in New York versus in Berlin. It's much easier.
We have the same experience in
the
Los
salary
Angeles.
levels are like, half or something. So it is great, basically, and I have the data. It's the first time that actually I feel like I actually know that that's the case, and that is amazing. So yeah. Berlin is really happening at the moment. It's just been building, but like there's huge potential still in this place. Very excited for the future.
Well, and on that note, thanks to these two talented people, and thanks to all of you lovely, creative, open, liberal, talented people out in the audience for listening to us. And thanks a lot.
Thank you.